Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Bitcoin Business Bureau. I'm your host, Litecoin Leader, and today's a very big day. It is the first piece that we are going to announce for the game ALTCOINopoly. Now, I have gone back and forth on how to decide which pieces are going to be given out, which ones are going to be free, which ones are going to be on YouTube, because some of them are going to have to be free on YouTube because we want to encourage more people to subscribe, of course. But to be fair to our subscribers, only subscribers are going to get access to all the pieces. And they're the only ones that are going to be able to fill out the entire worksheet or the game board and send it in to be eligible to win the grand prize. A trip for 4 to Myrtle Beach and dinner with me. I'll let you decide which one is more valuable. But we have a lot to talk about. I really like this coin. I think you're going to understand why I chose it for it to be first. I thought about going around the board piece by piece by piece, but I wanted to give away the first board piece rather than the first one past the corner piece where you collect $200. I think you know where I'm going with that statement. Rather than starting at the very spot after that, I would have thought I'd go with the commuter rail spot after the board, which I'll include in the video to show you where to write down this coin's name correctly on the board. But the commuter rail spot is a very profitable and very important spot in the game that this ALTCOINopoly is based on. So that's where I thought I'd start, and that's where we're going to launch our first ever coin announced for ALTCOINopoly. Here we go. Hope you enjoy.
So to talk about our very first piece for ALTCOINopoly, we're going to start at the corner where we begin most of the game, but we're not going to start with the very first piece, or the second, or the third. We're actually going to go to the most important piece on the first side of the board, which is the commuter rail piece. So the commuter rail, I think you know what I mean there, you can take a ride on one of those, will be the first space we talk about. So we're going to call this area Zone 1. So what is Zone 1? This is what I call the cheap rent district. All these coins will be relatively cheap in comparison to one another or comparison to the general marketplace. So the very first coin we're going to announce is the commuter rail spot, which happens to be Litecoin. Imagine that. I went with Litecoin first. So there are 4 commuter rail spots at the middle of each side of the board. There's one here, there's one here, and there's one here. But this is the cheapest of all 4, so that is why I chose to put it here in the cheap rent district. I understand that Litecoin is now over $200, so it's not necessarily cheap, but it's the cheapest of all the 4 commuter rail spaces. So with that said, let's go into the further analysis and talk a little bit more about Litecoin. There are actually quite a number of differences between Litecoin and Bitcoin. Even though they're both proof-of-work coins, meaning that it takes a miner to create more coins, and they run a mining algorithm to create the next block, there are a number of differences. First off, Litecoin has 84 million coins versus Bitcoin's 21 million. They both have an upper cap or upper bound on the number of coins, so never be more than that number, which is great as far as knowing how many there will ever be and planning accordingly. But the similarities also diverge in how often those blocks come out. Litecoin produces a block every 2.5 minutes. Bitcoin takes around 10. So it's not exact because there's the level of difficulty set for the miners, so that on average it'll be 10 minutes for Bitcoin, 2.5 for Litecoin. But on average, Litecoin will produce 4 blocks for every 1 on Bitcoin. Also, the language that's used for Bitcoin versus Litecoin is different. Bitcoin uses an algorithm called SHA-256. I won't go on the technicals about it, but it uses an encryption code that's part of the cryptographic nature of it. Whereas Litecoin uses something a little bit lighter and easier to port around called a script. So that makes it much more easily incorporatable by other projects and other products out there, so that Litecoin can partner easier with other projects. Looking at the numbers of Bitcoin versus Litecoin, if we jump over to CoinMarketCap briefly, we can see Bitcoin is obviously the #1 coin, and we're looking at about $1 trillion market cap with 18.5 out of the ever existing 21 million coins already mined. Litecoin at coin number 9 sits at 8.6 billion versus 1 trillion for Bitcoin, significantly smaller. and 66.5 or so of the Litecoin that will ever be made, 66.7 million out of a potential 84 million Litecoin that will ever be made have already been mined. Litecoin and Bitcoin also have a halving event every 4 years where they reduce the number of coins that are rewarded per block. Litecoin's most recent one was in 2019, so it'll be 12.5 Litecoin produced for every block until 2023. It's about 2 years behind Bitcoin's schedule, who just went through another halving to take them to 6.25 just this year. Last year. Going back to the original article, we could talk about some of the discussions about the use case of Bitcoin versus Litecoin. There's a mention of the gold versus, here it is, Bitcoin is considered digital gold, so it's a store of wealth, versus Litecoin's digital silver, which is more of a means of exchange. There are other coins that compete with Litecoin for that title or that use case, such as Bitcoin Cash, but Litecoin is the number one that's far ahead out there as far as time in the marketplace. I mentioned the proof of work earlier. I will, again, include this article later. Yeah, and Litecoin is much faster as well. The security is a little bit different than Bitcoin. Litecoin has never gone down. The network has never gone down. Bitcoin went down in its first year when they had to reset the network. But they're both extremely secure blockchains. And Litecoin's never gone down. And the transaction speed, even though the security is just a little bit less, a little bit different, the speed is very quick. You can move coins quickly and efficiently and cheaply with Litecoin. That's often why it's recommended for people just getting started to go ahead and get a couple of Litecoin and just practice moving a Litecoin, or even fractions of Litecoin, because it costs maybe a dime to move a Litecoin, and just send it back and forth just to get some practice with it. Now let's take a look at some of the recent articles that are out there about Bitcoin and Litecoin and what's being incorporated on both networks. Number one major item that should be mentioned is the Lightning Network. Both coins are on the Lightning Network, and this is considered basically a side chain or a secondary layer or a layer 2 solution to the blockchain. In other words, it's like rather than have everything written to the main blockchain, which can take a while, it can be not as effective as doing it every so often. You think about it as like setting out some money each day for you to spend and then resolve at the end of the day. So the Lightning Network allows you to do that. So you're allowed to transact for a while, and then it'll resolve at the end of the day to merge the ledgers onto the main chain. So the Lightning Network allows you to go much faster while you're on the Lightning Network, because you've already secured the Bitcoin and Litecoin there for the day, and it comes back, and the speed goes way up, which is the major plus for Bitcoin, because Bitcoin cannot be used very easily for transactions because of the sluggishness of its network by design. Litecoin would seem to be not as beneficial for Litecoin because they almost have all these features already. So now this helps Bitcoin to compete with Litecoin. But the fact that both are now going to be available on everywhere the Lightning Network is accepted means that Lightning Network will use both and easily play along with both. A lot of people will not want to spend their Bitcoin, but will use Litecoin as their spending pile, and their Bitcoin as their storage or saving a wealth pile of wealth. So it's just it's a common understanding that in psychology, people associate coins with one particular purpose a lot easier. So this is the Lightning Network's major thing to hang your hat on right now, is that Visa and MasterCard are very likely to use the Lightning Network as the cryptocurrency equivalent of the SWIFT network or the Visa and MasterCard network that's currently being used for transactions. Visa and MasterCard are very likely to adopt a Lightning Network, which will be a big boost to the use case of both Bitcoin and Litecoin and the demand on both. So since Bitcoin is going to be more of a store of wealth, Litecoin could see a huge uptick in demand as Visa and MasterCard move towards incorporating the Lightning Network to add cryptocurrency as a payment option. Other features have been added to Litecoin recently as well. There's been talk about Mimblewimble for quite some time, and that's finally been added as of last March. And what Mimblewimble is a privacy standard. So you can incorporate a feature at your choice where you can anonymize your transactions rather than having your address being very easily found on the blockchain through a blockchain explorer. You can add Mimblewimble, which adds a level of privacy and anonymity to any transactions. So that's a benefit. Another benefit of another network is the Flare network, which originally was starting with XRP, but now is working with their Spark token, the Flare token, to work with Litecoin owners. So there's going to be an airdrop of Flare coins to Litecoin holders. What does that mean? What will it benefit to the Lightning Network? For Litecoin, Litecoin will now have the availability of the Flare Network's ability to incorporate smart contracts. So now you're going to have a major coin that's not Ethereum able to do smart contracts. So you will have a coin as a means of exchange that will be able to do smart contracts. That's not going to be a feature for Bitcoin. So imagine, so now you have a coin you have two coins that are on the Lightning Network, and only one of them has smart contracts. So the smart contract will afford them to do many new things and many additional features that will not be afforded or available to Bitcoin users. So where I am regarding long-term view of Litecoin, this is the one-day chart for roughly a year, I believe. Yes. So you can see that it was pretty stagnant and dormant last fall, living in the $40 to $50 range. But in the last 6 months or so, we've gone from 50 to over 200. So that's a significant move. And granted, Bitcoin has made some significant moves too, but as those saying that Litecoin's not moving much have not been looking at the last 6 months. Looking just at the year to date, we can see a little bit more of a zoomed in viewpoint where Litecoin hit in the 230s and pulled back and went back up and pulled back again. So this made sort of a W shape, which is similar to a cup shape with a handle, and measuring, and one way to technically measure this and set a target would be to measure the depth of the cup, which is roughly $70 US, and then adding that to the neckline of the cup, which is roughly 230, so call it 300. A reasonable target in a short time frame would be about $300 for Litecoin. Going forward longer term, this is the Litecoin versus Bitcoin chart going way back. This is, I believe, a 5-year chart. So I drew a general trend line. When I first got involved with Litecoin, it was roughly 50 Litecoin for every Bitcoin. Now we're in the ballpark of about, let's see, that would be, I'd say probably around 300 Litecoin for every Bitcoin. So you can see this general trend has been downwards, but as soon as this starts to curve up, it may curve back up and retest this trend line, and then start to take off. A lot of people have said Litecoin could eventually wind up being 4-to-1 to Bitcoin, which is not out of the realm of possibility, but that's probably a little bit rose-colored glasses in the best case scenario. Odds are 50-to-1 is a reasonable hope to get back to the 0.02 level, which is this level back in 2018. And if that was to happen, that would be roughly a 6x move compared to the speed of Bitcoin going up. So there's a lot of appeal for Litecoin for the long term, and for me, it's one of the longer term holding targets that I like to look at. So it's a brief synopsis of Litecoin. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk about more coins in the near future.
Well, there's our first piece. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone what coin I would choose, considering my name is Litecoin Leader and the website is litecoinleader.com. But I think you can understand why I chose that one. There's definitely 3 or 4 solid top-notch coins that could be chosen for those commuter rails that go around the board. So considering that we're choosing the cheapest one right now, and it's well established, I think it's a good choice of picking out Litecoin as our first piece. So with that said, be sure to mark down mark down the pieces, and we will be getting a board for you to download shortly from the website. And with that, you'll be able to mark down all the pieces and submit your contest entry. Best of luck. See you at litecoinleader.com. With all that said, I'll close the drawer on the bureau, and I'll see you next time.